Hello and welcome to our game with you as ever every Thursday afternoon. Delighted to be brought to you once again by our great sponsors, Lotto Land, and delighted to be joined by Pat Ryan, who looks like he's gone full mullet on us today.
Yeah, well, I can't. My barber's in Thailand at the moment. I texted her yesterday for a haircut. Yeah, she sent me back a picture of it on the beach in Thailand, so be another while before I get started. How are you?
I'd be very, as you can tell by my lovely head of hair, I'd be very selective about who I let go near it. So I found a good barber up the country here, and I have a good barber down the country. So it's the two of them or nobody else, and it still turns out like a bit like a forest anyway. But sure, listen, that's another story. Pat, what did you make of the weekend, and what have you made of the championship? So, no, we'll just say championship overall so far, Munster in particular. What have you made of it overall?
Brilliant, really. I've been to the two Limerick games, and I went down to see Tipp and Cork as well, which was, look, that one was a little bit of a disaster given what happened at the start. But overall, a fantastic start to the championship. The two draws, I think, really set it up nicely at the beginning, didn't it? It almost ensures that it's going to go to the last day for at least four of the teams. And just some fantastic games, some great goals. Like, I don't know how... I watched the Cork and Clare game above in Thurles before the Limerick and Tipp match, and I still don't understand how Clare came back and drew that game. Being 12 points down at half-time, being 8 points down, with less than 10 minutes to go. That's outrageous. Like, it was kind of this bonanza on day one, And then the following week later, when Watford beat Clare, that was one of my predictions here when I was on with you the last time. I said that my predictions were Watford, Clare, and Tipp would all only win one game. So I'm kind of thereabouts so far. And no, brilliant. And even Leinster, I really enjoyed. I watched Wexford and Dublin, which I thought was an unreal game. Like, I love, as a forward by nature anyway, I love a game with loads of goals, and that had that. And other than that, then in Leinster, I suppose Galway have been disappointing, in the game with Kilkenny. I thought that was going to be a great game as well, but unfortunately it didn't pan out that way. But a great start, and even probably what's obvious is I'd say the best is yet to come. When you're coming into games now, the teams need wins, and we'll get into it now as we go on, I'm sure. But next week, if even Limerick and Cork, who people think are both true, whichever one loses that game next week, they go into their last round more than likely knowing that if they lose, they won't. You know what I mean? They won't get through.
Yeah.
So now they have two bites at the cherry to get to that 5 points. They're both on 3, but. And this Saturday's game now was massive as well. I'd love if this Saturday's game was a draw again, because to keep Clare and Tipp, from a neutral point of view, to keep Clare and Tipp alive and well going into the last round of the game as well. But look, it's been an unbelievable start to the championship. Time is going too fast now. The games are coming too fast. In some ways, you just wish it went a bit longer. But I don't know. What did you think?
Yeah, just on Saturday, a draw would be ideal because every permutation is on the table nearly then, going into the last round. And if they can both end up on 4, and probably neither would be expected to be on 4 at the minute. And then obviously if Watford beat Tipp, they're on 4. It just, you'd love another draw just to make it even madder than it already is. Something I wanted to ask you, when you said you were down at Tipp and Cork, which end of the field were you at? Were you at the end or did you see the incident at the start that led to Darren McCarthy's red?
I was actually at the opposite end. It was my first time in the terrace in about, I'd say, 12, 14, 15 years, I'd say. I haven't been in the terrace in so long. And I was actually with two cousins of mine. They flew over from London. They come over from London for every Tipp game. And one of them actually watching now, he told me to give a plug. He said, if anyone wants to go hurling in London, I don't know if I've done this before, but he asked me to do it again. He said they're looking for hurlers each year. So Kilburn Gales in London, get on to them if you're over in London. So that's my plug done. But
hey, while I'm at we were over in Vancouver a couple of years ago, and I give my plug. A fella has been asking me behind the scenes to give him a plug. If you're going hurling in Vancouver, JP Ryan's is the only place to go hurling. So there's two plugs in one go.
Fellas have loads of options, but I was in the end where Cork got the 3 goals in the first half, which again, if we're going through games in a while, incredible to see their movement. And to play their full forward. But no, I didn't see what happened with Darren McCarthy and your man with Sean O'Donoghue, wasn't it? Now it's funny, what my cousin said as we were walking in, he was on about the Limerick game. It's pretty obvious now that it was orchestrated from management down, this kind of, we're going to set out our stall, etc., what way you want to put it. And it's like anything in life, that's great unless you get caught, People love to say after the Tipp game above a Tipp in Limerick that worked well and it set the tone, but now it cost them the game the last day before the game even started. You know what I mean? So it was a real pity now. I'm not just saying of someone who drove down to Cork hoping to watch a great game. It was an awful pity. Now, I don't know. I know you've covered it somewhat maybe last week or week before in terms of diving and stuff. I've no time personally for what Sean, I don't know who done. It seemed to me he got a belt in the chest. People can say what they want. They can say, oh, but he still got hit. He still got striking. Still a red card. If you get hit in the chest and you go down holding another area you weren't hitting, I just don't get that. I really don't get it. Some people say, and everyone is different, that's fine. Some fellas will say, look, you do what you do to get an advantage. Listen to that. Like Tommy Walsh was on Off the Ball or something recently, and he was on about how his generation grew up watching different soccer players that didn't dive, and then now different generations, they're influenced by soccer players that did dive. Well, like, I grew up watching Tommy Walsh get a full belt of the hurley into the head off Benny Dunn, and he just bounced up off the ground. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I hate it. I don't like to see it. I don't understand. I just don't understand it, why you dive to get a man sent off. I know what you're trying to do. I suppose you're trying to help your team to win, but I just hate it. And I really, really hope there's some sort of way that's stamped out, that players that are caught doing that maybe face some sort of punishment, because it's not a good road we're going down there. I just don't like it.
Yeah, there's nothing written in rule now, but I actually do think there needs to be something written in rule. And listen, maybe you'll have people going around shouting, "Oh, he's diving," or "He didn't get hit," or whatever. But it's a really, really bad look. I don't think there's any honour in it at all. There's no honour in it whatsoever. If you can't beat your man, I would say in a fair way. Like, to be honest, I played cornerback and I was pulling and dragging and doing bits and pieces and playing hurls and stuff like that. But he'd never ever do something like that. So, and listen, it's widespread now. That's one incident we picked out. You could pick out the Adam Hogan incident, even though he was hit. Same as Sean O'Donoghue. They were both hit. We'll never know the severity of just how hard they were hit. But you'd think they were going to be carted off in the ambulance the way things were going on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not reality either,
Yeah, I know. Look, and they're two very good players. You know what I mean? One was captain Cork last year, got to the Ireland final, some achievement. One got Young Hurler of the Year. Serious players, but they're playing in a position in that, and it's kind of an area that you're kind of known as being a tough player. Like cornerbacks, you kind of have to be real tough to be a cornerback. So it goes against everything.
You have to be real tough because some of the time you're kind of borderline useless, and that's the only way you can play it. If you're not tough,
I was putting it in a nice way. You spread it out, but again, it goes against the idea then of being a tough player, cornerback, if you're going to go down that handy. And again, look, I don't want to go on about it all the time either, but I know you kind of went through it before, but it was just in my mind there when you asked me again about being down in the Cork game, because I actually, I went down to that game. I watched the Watford Clare game beforehand. I had an unbelievable day out, and just as in up to that point, really looking forward to Tipp and Cork. And I firmly believe myself that the game was over as soon as the red card happened. The Clare and Cork game proved that with only 10 minutes to go, it lost an 8-point lead. Tipp hadn't the hope win that game when it was strong. And I think Tipp were geared to play really well, and I think that was going to be a great game. I really do. They scored 24 points with 14 men. I know they got well beat and everything. The fellas said, what are you on about? They got hammered. They still scored 24 points over 70 minutes with a man down against the favourites of the All-Ireland. You know what I mean? The same day, Clare, the All-Ireland champions, only scored 21 against Waterford. So it's a pity what happened. It's a pity for people watching the game and the way it happened, because it was gone out of it straight away. The only bit of solace you had was watching some class players, and Brian Hayes and Huggy and these fellas. They really are class. You know what I mean? And you'd have to feel for the Tipp backs in that game in particular, and the Tipp forwards, because they're just chasing an extra man that, the Cork backs could just work the ball to an extra man and give in a great ball in. But my God, I'm sure you saw maybe the tweet about Brian Hayes and his goal involvements there recently.
Unbelievable.
He's 7 goals, 7 assists, etc. Watching him blow the last day, I don't know, he is something else. I don't know how you go about marking him now at the moment. He was a joy to watch, but where I was above him, because I was right up behind him, you know what I mean? And even Huggy's instep, where he saw it, the dummy to Mikey Breen, fellas would say geez, how does that happen there? And it was, so bad for Mikey Breen. But look, he's just committing. You have to commit fully. Yeah. And it looks easy, I'll tell you, watching it, even where I am, but what a class little instep, you know what I mean?
The thing about it as well, Pat, is that it's not like it was in any way obvious. That's why Mikey Breen is thinking, I've been there as a defender where you're thinking, just throw your body at it. You have a chance of blocking it. Then all of a sudden, last second, he pulls this little shimmy and inside, and there's nothing you can do. But it's not as if it was in any way telegraphed.
No, exactly. Yeah. So And that's just the way it unfolded that day, in fairness. And I suppose Tipp have to, not that they get to use that as an excuse now, but Tipp, I think a lot of people, we spoke about it before the start of the championship, that what a tough run they had, playing Cork twice and Limerick, in the space of 3 games. And now we've been heading to All-Ireland champions, heading down to Clare. That we'll get into that too. But look, 1 point from them from 2 games is not the worst position to be in either. A lot of Tipp people, I think, would have taken that scenario, because at the end of the day, they probably knew to themselves, look, if we beat Clare and Waterford, we'll be through. And now that's a certainty. Before, you mightn't do it with 4 points, but now they know, look, if we beat Clare on Saturday, once we beat Waterford in the last game, we're through. Could even be in the Munster final. Now, the problem is Clare thinking the exact same. Clare thinking, we have to win now the weekend, we probably have to win after that against Limerick as well. So, like I said, and you're asking about the championship, it definitely does. The next couple of weeks are massive now. And from a Limerick point of view, the home and away is great. I was down in Waterford last week, really enjoyed being down in Waterford. Hadn't been down there for years. And then from the flip side, in the home and away, it's great to have 2 Limerick games coming up. People in Limerick love the home games, you know what I mean? It's probably going to be a sellout now against Cork Sunday week. And I'd imagine if Clare win on Saturday, I'd imagine the last game would be probably a sellout as well, because Clare will be fighting to stay in the championship. So, yeah, a couple of class weeks coming up.
Talk to me about the Cork movement, and even looking at it from the terrace, particularly in the first half. You got to see a bird's eye in the first half when they were really going gung-ho, and there was no showboating or messing around out the pitch or anything like that. What in particular were your kind of main takeaways from it?
Well, no, I suppose in one sense it's a small bit false in that it was, in that the Cork men, in terms of the men hitting in the ball, it wasn't under as much pressure because of the spare men. But at the same time, just the constant running, the depth of Cork, the depth is just so crucial. And if we get into the Waterford and Limerick match in a while, I'm watching it from the last couple of years now, since I haven't been involved in Limerick. When I go to some games like Kilkenny and Waterford the last time, I've always thought Kilkenny were guilty of this against Limerick, where they're trying to do the right thing by full forward line coming out. Even as far as the 21, you're out way too far. Because when Limerick have the ball in, they're just exceptional at, full back line and half back line and midfield. There's never been a 2 to 9 that can pass the ball like the Limerick 2 to 9 can pass the ball to each other. It's just incredible. When you stay that deep, then it makes it harder for them. You know what I mean? No, I know I've completely went off your question there.
No.
I was handing about the Limerick full back line, but going back to the Cork, the 3 lads, the three lads in the Cork forward line were closer to the net than the Tipperary goalie was at times, and in the half forward line in are just constantly moving across the field. And when they're moving across the field, as much as you want to stay zonally, and I don't know what Tipp do, like most teams now, they try to keep 5 and 7 at both sides if they can. But eventually then you do get pulled and dragged left and right of it, and then that's when Brian Hayes then and Hoggy and Connolly, then that's when these runs that they're just constantly making, that's when they get into all this space. You know what I mean? When 5 or 7 just gets dragged in that little bit. And then, of course, the runners they have then coming in. You know what I mean? If you think back to the first goal, Tim O'Mahony's, Brian Hayes comes out to the wing, wins it like he's so good at doing. They're just getting out the hard runs as well. I don't know. Now, Hurling is played upstairs as well as downstairs. Like, Hoggy is just making young lads look slow at times. Like, you know what I mean? But, of course, obviously, he's able to read the game. Like, he's 37 this year, but he's still making these hard runs that Brian Hayes is making, that Connolly is making, and he's still getting out in front. Which, if we go back to Tim O'Mahony's goal, Brian Hayes comes out. Where does he get the ball? He's actually at number 10 position. So where was number 10? He's gone. Don't know where he is, but he's not there. He's moved right across the field to be an option for the person who did hit the ball to Brian Hayes to cross-field the ball. And then what does Tim O'Mahony do? Similar to what Adam English nearly done once or twice against Waterford. That run from midfield, and then obviously that pass in from Brian Hayes was just weighted perfectly, and Tim O'Mahony took it through the middle and finished it very, very well, to be fair to him. And then the next goal, then you had Hoggy's goal again, a very, very deep ball into the full forward line. They've really brought it back in a way, in terms of Route 1. Dublin, did you watch Dublin and Wexford? I'm sure you did. Yeah. Dublin got some great goals from going Route 1, and Wexford got 1 or 2 as well. But Dublin got some great goals from Route 1 in Fermanagh Herity, is it?
John Heatherton.
John Heatherton, yeah. And they got some great goals from that. And, I was talking to a fella about it recently, and he was saying that, we ran about managements over the years, and some managements I found over the years, and you had them be a club or different things underage with county, they nearly don't want to be seen to say, well, my game plan is go Route 1. They nearly want to be seen to say that, well, I can't just say that. That's just too straightforward. Like, what do they think of me if I just say that? But you're like, you know, if you were asking directions for a place, and if I said you go up the M50, like, you know, and you said to me, no, I want to go a more complicated way, like, it wouldn't make sense.
I want to avoid the e-toll.
yeah. Do you know, so and that's what I found was funny interesting about the Dublin and Wexford game was, you know, so many goals came off Route 1, and obviously Cork then are showing that as well. So it's just goals seem to be back in fashion at the moment, and like I said, my personal point of view, I enjoy watching games with loads of goals. So you know, and then it's a case this weekend now.
Quick one about the depth. You've played inside. What advantages does that depth give you? Like, I was looking at Horgan against Clare, and he was going full tilt for a ball, but his run was starting at the end line. So he's receiving it at the furthest out he was receiving it was the 21, like. So he's receiving it at the 21, and then all of a sudden everything is on. Whereas if, I'm sure at times, sometimes in games, even years ago anyway, you would have started to run at the 21. Then all of a sudden you're ending up with the 45. And you know what I mean? Like, it's a real difficult thing to do, and it requires a lot of concentration, I'd say, and a lot of patience as well to actually stay in.
It requires an awful lot of patience, to be honest, because you'll go through longer periods in a game without being involved if you stay really deep. But like that, it'll come off. If by a full forward line staying really, really deep, and maybe it's only two of them like Limerick do, and at times Galway is just always the real deep, and Cork are actually putting nearly all three inside there. But for me as an inside forward, in terms of you're saying to me, can you get the best ball from the best delivery, whoever you want to think of, the best person that can deliver a ball in Ireland, or even a 50-50 ball, or a ball that might drop short. I'd rather be getting a bad ball if I'm on the inline from someone than a great ball if I'm starting my run at 21, because I'm going to run into the half forward line. Like a forward's best friend in an inside full forward line is space, is grass in front of you, grass left and right, grass in front of you, because when you come out then and the ball is, you know, it just has to be hit into the grass. Now every forward is different. Some fellas like it different ways, some fellas like it down on top of them, etc. I was more kind of maybe a corner forward that, you know, I'd love to be coming out onto the ball, onto space. Like you see a lot of corner forwards now, they're just staying in and they're crossing over and back. You know what I mean? If they're at the left post, they're crossing over to the right because they want to be able to take the ball on the turn. What every full back line player then is what they're being trained for the last 10 years is, and you hear this at nearly every train session, spoil the ball. So they're just telling, you know, come out and just make sure the ball goes to ground.
Yeah.
And then, you know, our 5 or 6 will be back and we'll mop it up. We'll crowd them out. You know, what you want to do as a forward is what you want the opposite to do at the other end. You want no space at the other end, whereas you want all the space above it at your forward. So it's just trying to protect your space. I remember it was what Paul Connacht said to us: protect your space by staying in, by being patient, by staying as deep as you can. And then obviously, and I'm not coming down on Waterford, but they ran out of patience as such very, very early in the game against Limerick. That I was just watching them, would say, when the ball was other in the field, just walking out the field, coming out the field. You know what I mean? Only as far now I'm talking about maybe as the D. And then straight away, then if I'm Mark Fitzgerald halfback or Tyke de Burke and I look up, first of all, a lot of people are saying, like, why did Waterford hit high balls on top of them? First of all, they can't hit any other type of ball if they look up and there's no grass to hit it into. You know what I mean? And then I couldn't think of a worse team in the history of the game to be hitting high balls on top of them with crowded areas in Limerick. Because like I said a while ago, there is no one, and it was a joy to watch the other night now when they were playing well, there's no one like the Limerick backs to work a ball out. It really is, the unselfishness is incredible. When you say if you're watching the backs doing this compared to the Waterford backs, that, and again it comes from fellas that they're trying to do the right thing. They might try and bust your tackle, but the Limerick backs, I've never seen it like it, that the pass just happens instantly, bang. You know, no second thought of can I go forward here, or no second thought of, you know, maybe if I solo here 10 yards I can get a score. You know, it's just, oh, he's free and he has his hand up waiting for the ball, he gets it immediately. You know, and when they're playing like that, they're obviously very, very hard to beat because they're so good in possession. Like, there's kind of people in Limerick are kind of buzzing since the Waterford game. Fellas, the kind of trend seems to be saying, oh, we're back to our best. And like, I was in town with one or two of the players on Sunday having a drink, and a fella came over to us and he said to two of the boys, well done. He said to us, like the good old days, he said. And I was just thinking in my own head, like, the good old days, like, we won, how long ago were the good old days? We won the Munster final last year, you know what I mean? But that's, we won an Ireland the year before that and lost the semi-final by 2 points. So, you know, it's just funny the way fans are impatient, I think, by nature, aren't they? They get worried. You draw the first game, they think, oh God, is this over? Are we done? and then you win and then you win the next game, and it's like, oh, we're back, we're back. So it's just sure. Look, and fans are great that way too. You need that bit of a buzz around the town. Like it was a great weekend in Limerick last weekend, the bank holiday weekend, and the Riverfest was on. So a lot of the players got to go out and enjoy themselves after the win, and that can't be underestimated too either. When you're coming into kind of a 2-week break, fellas need that, and they're in great spirits after getting a win. So it sets it. Look, everything is set up nicely for the Limerick and Cork match in a couple of weeks. That it's going to be an absolutely huge game, and probably, I'd say you'd agree with me, probably won't be the first time they meet.
No,
unless something seismic happen, unless one of them maybe gets knocked out or someone else steals a Munster final spot. We'd wait and see. But I don't know. That's kind of it on that.
Just on the Limerick backs coming out. What's that? Is that a trust in no matter who has the ball that they're going to deliver the right ball? That you're just getting it to, if someone is off your shoulder, it's not even a thought on who it is. The right ball is going to be given.
Yeah, it's just I think it's a complete trust in each other on the field. But you can talk about all these things again, just from being involved in different teams, that we'll be a great team and this and that. And, watching the difference between the Waterford back 6 and the 2 midfielders and the difference between and even their forwards at times, and then Limerick it's so conditioned into Limerick, and I suppose that you just give the ball. The ball is popped off and that's it. The ball is passed out. Kyle gets the ball at 6. He could turn and try and bust out one, but every time Barry Nash was available, Barry Nash got it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Every time Mike Casey got the ball, and he gave one unbelievable ball to Tom Morrissey for his first point.
Lovely ball down the line, wasn't it? Down the stand.
Unbelievable ball. But he looked up and that ball was on, and it's just bang. But if there was another right ball to be on more not often the time, we'll just say if Keane had come short and Tom wasn't as open, bang, he'd get it. You know what I mean? And I suppose when Keane looked back to his best of the night as well, it's when Keane is moving the ball really fast, and passing the ball. So it can't be underestimated either how much time, if you go back to 2018, we'll say, because it's the majority of the same players, look at how many minutes them 15, 16, 17, 18 players have played together in the last 7 seasons. There can't, nobody else is close. Kilkenny maybe, they made 2 All-Irelands in that time, 3 All-Irelands, in that time. But no one else is close in terms of minutes on the field. And obviously, even the training obviously is so repetitive as well that you're working that every night of training under pressure to work the ball out. But they have a leg up on that on other teams, I think, in terms of that they're so well conditioned into how they play. They have an unbelievable trust in each other that it's just people call it the process, whatever it is, or the system, but it's just great decision making really, and great trust in each other to just bang pop that ball when it comes and just give it and go. And when they are playing well, they look really good. I don't know, they played so well. I don't know how they only won by 6 points. So maybe that's a compliment to Waterford at the same time, because it did look like, we probably should have had a goal or two. The Bull was unlucky when he hit the post. Gillane ran through one stage, just missed a slight hand pass to Garo. That probably would have been a one-on-one chance as well. But look, hopefully, as you said before to me, as John says, to incrementally get better as it goes on. So hopefully the goals will come now the next day against Cork,
Just John Kiley's comments after the GA Plus I thought were really interesting. Mike Verney put a question to him, and it was like, when Waterford came back at you, did you hear this actually? When Waterford came back at you, with all the miles on the clock, all the years on the road, and Kiley was defiant. He was defiant after. He says they're not metal, they don't corrode or erode or anything like that. And I just thought, not being smart, I think that's fucking great. Because they have
I agree.
People kind of writing them off almost like they're over the hill. And it's funny, the comment you made there about the amount of reps they have and the amount of games they've played. People will flip that as a negative when you're beaten, and look at the same amount of bodies have played all the games. So it has to tell at some stage. Do you know what I mean? I just thought even his tone, and I could see, you've seen it in the dressing room, I'm sure, but his eyes looked like they were spitting fire a bit, which is great.
Yeah, when he gives them eyes in the dressing room, it can get scary too. I tell you that. But no, look, from someone that's a big Limerick fan, I'm so happy to hear him saying that, because I think it needs to be said. I don't want these Limerick greats retiring too early, unless some fella wants to walk away in a year or two if he properly feels like a Brian Fintan-esque thing, that it's a personal decision that he wants to go away early. We will never have, more than likely, we'll never have, it could take 50 years before we have a team like that again. So me personally watching the games, and I will be watching the games for all my life, obviously, but I want to see these players stay as long as possible. Whatever that takes. If that takes some of them that management's whatever they have to do to mind them that bit better or something like I want to see Dan Morrissey, Kyle, Barry Nash go through every line of the field, Hego, Tom, they'll go every single one of them. Like when they lose a game, fellas are mad to retire you. You know, the older players have often said that. Nolan McGrath's referenced it, Hoggy's referenced. We should be trying to keep on to these players for years. There should be no like, you know, oh, he has to be replaced or this or that. Like these are generational players for us here in Limerick that have won more than anyone in our history has ever won before. So I'm delighted he said that, because sometimes, like last year, I suppose it gets kind of the media. It's just kind of a normal thing. Oh, what will happen? Will they move away? And even if Limerick, God forbid, if they don't win that Ireland this year, I can't see anyone that played last week moving away. You know what I mean? Most of these lads are only 30, 31. Like Dan Morrissey is one of the oldest on the as outfield players. He'll be 32 this year. Like Dan Morrissey can keep going for another, as long as he wants, really, for another good few years, hopefully. You know, so I couldn't agree more with his comments, and I really hope that all them great players stay for as long as they can.
Just on Limerick the other night, I'll actually just fly through this here. James Daly just says, Pat is savage to listen about the game. As a Limerick man, it's very refreshing to hear every detail Pat talks about. It's standing hurler himself. Cannot wait for Cork Sunday week. The other thing I was going to say is, like, I still think Limerick were only in third gear the other day. And, like, I don't necessarily think they'll win Munster, but I think by the time they get to Croke Park, they will be hitting full throttle, full gear, 6th gear. There was bits of it the other night, and one of the boys was on to me saying, oh, you know, is it a bit worrying? Limerick should have maybe, when the second goal went in against Tipp, maybe they normally would have had them buried. Even the other day, they left Waterford in the game. Now, I always felt Waterford about arm's length, but I just think it's kind of building, and it's going to build and build and build. What's your feeling on that? And even, like, I know it's a very, you know, subjective thing, but what gear do you think they're in at the minute, even? And what gear did you think they were in the other day?
I do think there was probably a small bit more in them the other day if it's needed, but I do think they were humming as well as, you know, as maybe a gear or two below of what they can get to now. What some of them lads can get to is incredibly high. When you go back to the Kilkenny final of 23, I think it was it, like, when they got humming there, like they were, you know what I mean? I don't know if I've ever seen hurling like it, to be honest. And so them levels are there, them gears are there, and I think a Cotton O'Neill coming on, he was either 22 or 23 and getting like 2 points from 80 yards. You know what I mean? So, and then he was 2 years younger, then 3 years younger. You know, he came on the last day. I think personally, for me, Cotton O'Neill will be starting. Whenever you're talking about if we're in a Munster final or Ireland semi-final, Cotton O'Neill will be starting, in my opinion. You know, he had an injury the first day, but what even he done the last day when he came on, caught a puck out up like a salmon, as Tom Ryan said about Kieran Clare. He went and about 96. I remember hearing that in a documentary. But you know, he scored 2 points, I think, and was unlucky for a third. You know, and we have a couple of other players come back. Obviously, Peter Casey picked up a knock. He's huge. Like, you know, if we could get Peter back, like you said, for the real knockout stage, it could be great. David Reedy said afterwards in an interview that Declan Hannon was back fully training. Unreal. Dara Donovan came on. I thought Dara made a fierce impact. I know the game was probably over, but in the 5 or 6 minutes normal time he was on, he got a fierce amount of hits in. Got some great. Got on a good few positions for a lad that was only on maybe 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 minutes. So there's definitely another gear there, but there's also another gear in other teams as well. You know what I mean? Let's not kind of think here that Limerick are the only ones. Like, obviously Cork are humming away nicely. Waterford, Waterford can win even the Tipp match, they'd probably get through. You know, Clare, then if Clare can win this weekend, Clare will absolutely fancy themselves against Limerick. They have a good record against Limerick at home between league and championship in the last 2 years. You know, and they're Ireland champions, so they're not going to go away. And then we haven't even discussed the other side of things, that, you know, what could happen coming out of Leinster. I think Dublin are building lovely, you know, but whether they have the gears maybe to come up then when we get to the latter stage, I don't know. Kilkenny, I don't know. I thought Kilkenny maybe missed their chance with a lot of these players in 22 and 23. You know, that they've been there a while and they just haven't been able to add freshness, because I presume the players just aren't there. If they were there, they'd be added in. You know, they're dealing with the best of what they have. So to answer your question, there's definitely more gears in Limerick, but there's also more gears in other teams. And it's not like a couple of years ago where I felt maybe 2 or 3 years ago that when Limerick hit that year, they definitely win that Ireland. That's probably a bit different now, because Cork have a fierce high ceiling as well. And then, you know, and Clare are Ireland champions. So we're in a good position, but we have a lot of work to do, is what John Kiley probably say. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can I ask you about Hegarty's flick up? Like, my God above. Is that type of thing totally encouraged in training, and lads to be creative and kind of do whatever they do? Like, because to do that at full pace with a body underneath the ball, basically, and to flick it out the other side and then just throw it over the bar. Like, it's like, and I often say about the likes of Kyle Hayes banging the ball off the ground in full stride. Like, that sort of stuff, like 20 years ago, like you'd be falling over the place. Whereas now it's nearly just common.
The Offaly lads started that, didn't they?
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, that was actually right in front of me. I was in the uncovered stand in Walsh Park, and that was right in front of me. And Stephen Bennett actually lined it up. He came in pulling as hard as he could on that ball. And that's actually what made the pick up so well. That's what made it so good, was because there was a bit of a clash of the ash as well. Stephen Bennett just came in as hard as he could to try and get the ball. But Higo is gifted, like, you know, he's we'll say, look, is it encouraged in training? It's not. You're not told to do it, but you're definitely not told you can't do it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And obviously, look, you've the likes of Cian Lynch and Higo. You know, tis like anything. Tis like players that can shoot. You know, Seamus Flanagan has been unreal over the years, Glenn, from shooting from positions that fellas might automatically think, why are you shooting from there? But sure, if you can score from there, then you can shoot from there. Do you know what I mean? So, and it's like the boys, if you can do it, if you can flick the ball up into your hand and get the ball over the bar, then do it. You know what I mean? And what I remember, I've seen that score back a couple of times since, and what they don't show just before that score is, if you go back and look at it, they show Higo just for David Reedy came out 60 yards and went to give a tackle, and then the ball went on 20 yards and he followed back another man, and Padraig Fitzgerald, who came on and got it. Reedy was after making a 60-yard run already, kind of about 2 seconds lapsed, and then he made a 30-yard run, forced Padraig Fitzgerald to come back, and then Coughlin got the block, and then Higo got his, you know, he scored the game really. But if David Reedy didn't make 2 gut-busting runs, you know, there'd be no score for Higo there, you know. And it's just a small thing, I think, of what makes Limerick so great over the years, is that, yeah, there's a bit of class to get a score like that at the end, but it always comes from someone like what David Reedy done there. Do you know? That doesn't come otherwise. So no, and they're not the only team that operates like that. Every team is trying to work as hard as they can, but I think David Reedy, like that now, I watch back some of the match, and he's doing a fierce important job that I didn't even realise myself how well he played it until I watched some of it back. And the amount of tackles he's getting in, the amount of runs he's doing is very, very impressive at the moment. And it's actually very, very important to have a player like that, you know. Graham Mull was that player for years that would just, you know, Graham Mull was such an important player in our dressing room that he'd lead by obviously getting scores, but he'd lead, and he could have, you know, when we get the stats sheet back following Tuesday night, Graham could have the most tackles in the whole game. You know, so stuff like that is fierce important.
Yeah, really played a real selfless kind of role the other night, to be honest with you. You didn't see him on the ball nearly as much as you would, but he was doing a heap of donkey work for everybody else. Just 2 questions just to put the bow on Limerick. Quaid's recovery, that was one of the most kind of shocking things. I thought if he got to Croke Park, I thought if he's fit and he's a couple of weeks behind him, he'll play. But it's actually outrageous, like the time frame. He got operated on in December, and he was back playing the second last weekend of April with 3 weeks training under his belt.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. What a man, like, you know what I mean? He's just from training and playing with Nicki for a good few years. It's not really that surprising, because in terms of in the gym work now, and that squad will have a lot of lads that would be very good in the gym. Nicki he's right up there being one of the top players in the gym.
That's why he had to top off after the Munster final.
Yeah. Well, if you don't have it like that, you'll be keeping your top on until you're inside the dressing with that, because the fellas like him. But you know, just go. I always found that very impressive inside when I'd see Nicki going that extra mile in the gym and doing all the running when. Okay, they wouldn't do all the running all year because sometimes they're doing goalkeeper training, but during the preseason he'd be doing a lot of the running and do well in the running. I often thought to myself, like, he doesn't need to really do that much, if you know what I mean. You as a goalkeeper, you could mail some of that in, like, you know, you could get away with not being where he is in his gym work and how good he is in the gym, and obviously you can even see that work on him. So obviously when he came back now, did I think he'd be back? Not a hope of it. I really didn't think he'd be back. I didn't even think he'd be back really by our Ireland semi-final time when it happened before Christmas, because that's such a serious injury, like. So, but what a man to have back. I thought his puck-outs the other day were unreal. You know, one of the scores Adam got when it came to Keane, you know, Keane made a run out to number 12 position that was vacant, and he just put it into his pocket. Like the ball was nearly stopping. By the time Keane just came to the ball here, it was on his lap. It was such an easy ball to control in from Nicki, you know. And I thought his puckouts were savage against Tipp above the first day, you know. So and he's only going to get better as the year goes on as well, because he had no league game, you know, which is fierce important for players, even especially for a goalkeeper. You need your touch to be sharp. So he's going to be huge now coming into the next couple of games. He's going to be probably needed and tested more so in the next couple of games than he has been in the last couple of games. But no better man. Like what a keeper and what a legend, you know, especially in this county.
Pat, just a question that kind of popped into my head there just as we were chatting. And there's lads probably the length and breadth of the country that are subs on teams and coming in and trying to make a mark for 15 or 20 minutes or whatever. And it was a role that you played for a hell of a long time. I don't know if I ever really spoke to you about this before, but how do you make sure that when you're coming in that you're ready? Even how do you treat the main warm-up at the start of the game? When you know you're coming in maybe around the 55th minute, I'm just wondering what's your head frame like going into a game when you know that's probably your role. And just because I'm sure there's a lot of people, some lads are really good at doing it, then other lads it's like, oh, you either start them or maybe don't play them at all. What was your own? How did you find you got the best out of yourself in that role?
Yeah, it's a funny one. It's a good question now, and especially when you even mentioned the warm-ups. For me personally, so in the game, obviously the day of the game, and when you're heading out onto the field for the warm-up, obviously you know the team is named, you know the team, so I'm not playing. So for me, I felt that in those games I could go extra hard in the warm-up, if you know what I mean, just to really get the sprint into you, maybe sprint twice as much as you would if you were actually starting, just to get that, you know, just to get the kind of blood pressure up. And because you're going to be able to relax anyway as soon as you go back into as soon as the ball's about to be thrown in, you're sitting back down. After that, then it's just 100% mental, really. You know that kind of two things. You know you have to make an impact on a very limited time frame, and then you can't be guaranteed that you'll even get possession. You know, if you're on for 5 or 10 minutes, you don't actually know. Some days you could get a couple of possessions, you know, and then other days you mightn't. And this usually said to me in the dressing room, would say pre-match by some of the starters, like Grod Higgert, who was very good. He'd come over to you and he'd just say, like, oh, we need loads of energy now when you're coming on, you know. So that was always in my head, that when it was coming on, then it's just kind of like, even the way I'd run onto the field, in my head, because I'm just thinking about Grod. I remember he said that to me once years and years ago. So I remember that day, and I always took it forward in that even when I run onto the field, I'm going to run on as fast as I can. Yeah. You know, and if I pass someone, another player, I'm going to say something to them as I'm coming on, one of our own players. I said, come on, let's get it going. You know, just something. Because that fella, if I'm running past number 12 or 11, heading into the corner forward position, that fella who's playing at 11s after playing 60 minutes, hard slog, you know. So it's actually, people would underestimate when a sub comes in, it can give that person a lift, you know, just by sheer energy, just to bring energy into the forward line. I used to come in a lot and play with Galway on the inside line then. And like that then, I would purposefully actually try and make an extra run for Galway, if you know what I mean, in terms of that the ball could be closer to him and he could go and close down, but I could actually try and pass him out to be the one to get over to crowd a fella out, to, you know, because Galway has been doing that for 60 minutes. So it just comes back to mind frame, really. Like, what can I give for 5 or 10 minutes, even if I don't get the ball? Can I just give loads and loads and loads of energy? Can I show for every ball? And even you're coming onto a cornerback, marking a cornerback that's been on for 60 minutes. He's tired here as well, you know. So even just coming on, and the first thing I do, if I was coming onto a cornerback that's been playing for 60 minutes, is I just, as soon as I get into him, I just sprint to the other side of the field, just straight away. And I'm presuming then he's thinking like, oh, you know, for fuck's sake, I have to run over it. And when he run over it, I just come back to the other side again. And in my head, whether it was right or wrong, in my head, this was taking energy from them and giving energy to Limerick, you know, and being available. Because obviously when anyone out the field gets the ball, you know, as you've seen at games, they're like, you know, if someone isn't making a run inside, you'd often hear at club games, when somebody make a move inside or show something. So you just try and show for every ball as well. Even if you don't get it, you just try and make a run that at least the wing back looks up and you're an option. And if you get it, great. If you don't, then at least you're an option, you know. So mind frame more so than anything, I think, physically, you know. And unfortunately, then you're in the era then of when if you only come on for 10 or 15 minutes, like I did for that time, you have to go running afterwards, which was bit of a disaster. But there's nothing worse than that running. You do the running out, you go back into the dressing room, you have a bit of crack after win whatever, and then they say, all right, everyone back out now. That, played less than 30 minutes or something like that, and the subs that didn't come on, and you have to run in for a half an hour, which I don't miss that part, I'll tell you that.
No, I remember being down when, who did Clare play in the league? Clare played Wexford after beating them in Cusack Park, and it was miserable, and it nearly like torrential kind of thunderstorm nearly, and Clare were heading back out, and you're like, geez, like this is like Duggan and all these boys hadn't played much at all, or hadn't seen any minutes, or going training this absolute slop. You know what I mean? It's brutal.
Yeah, it's tough going. When you're sitting down, and even if you've just watched the match, or even if you've come on and you just have to tear into that then, and look, it's the S&C side of things, I suppose, but I always would have rather myself doing it. I would have rather nearly getting up the following morning doing it, but look, it's just one of the things that has to be done. Work has to be done.
Pat, we've been talking for 40-something minutes. We haven't talked properly about Tipp Clare yet. Like, what a monster of a game for both counties.
Huge, yeah.
Yeah, just where do you see Clare at the minute? Clare Echo reporting that Tony Kelly's in the frame to play, which would be great to see, and would be a massive boost if he is back. But where do you see them? They look very tired against Waterford, particularly in that second half. I thought they were in a good spot at half time, to be honest with you. The penalty probably turned the game a small bit. Momentum went against them. They were down 4 starters that day. You'd hope they'd have a couple of those boys back in the mix. But, their backs are to the wall again.
They are. Now, look, different opinions, different things. I think saying they were tired is an easy excuse to give them. You know what I mean? I don't think it just came from tiredness. I think their backs just played really poor, in my opinion. And it is tough when you're missing your full back for the last 10 years in Connacht Cleary.
You're talking more about the half back line, I'd say, though. The full back line was...
I am, yeah. No, I am. I'm talking about Diarmuid Ryan being a huge loss as well, because he's kind of the legs of the half back line. And Diarmuid Ryan now, again, I wish we had the teams out now. I'd love to know if Diarmuid Ryan is going to be back to the weekend. Even if he is, he's only played 10 minutes in the last, since the All-Ireland, or since his club championship probably, because he didn't play any of the league, and he started early against Cork and then came off. So, but some of their forwards actually, they got a good score in return off some of their forwards. Now, not all of their forwards. Like Shane Meehan done brilliant. Came in and got 4 points in play, coming in for Tony Kelly. Like if Tony Kelly got 4, probably would have got 4 points in play. So Shane Meehan done as well as he could. Ryan Taylor got 4. Duggan was brilliant, I thought. Again, he was brilliant in the second half against Cork. He was brilliant the last day. One player now, and I rate him extremely highly, that who has been poor and a letdown. He's an all-star, he's a Formula Hurler of the Year. He's only 1 point from playing both games. Is Mark Rogers. When the news of Shane O'Donnell broke earlier in the year, whenever it was that he was out, I remember thinking to myself, like, Mark Rogers will probably step up here now, like, and just basically be Shane O'Donnell this year, and going forward, which, again, I do rate him very highly. I think he's a very good player. He'd be very disappointed in himself, I'd say, with the last 2 games. Now, good hurlers, they always usually respond. He could be man of the match this weekend. Clare people would be hoping, but a fella like him, like that now, and even Adam Hogan, and a few more lads that I suppose they were the younger players for the last couple of years when Tony Kelly and Shane O'Donnell and John Conlon. Now it's time for them to be the leaders on the team. Do you know what I mean? When they're under pressure, because Conlon has got him out of jail before. Now Conlon is playing poor as well. That's pretty obvious. But they need other players. They can't just be relying on the same fellas who maybe got him out of jail 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, last year. They need Mark Rogers standing up. They need Adam Hogan standing up. They need Ryan Taylor was good the last day. Again, he got 4 points. Who else? Then the picking of their team is kind of funny as well. I don't understand how Ian Galvin is being left as a sub. I know he's a great impact sub, but I don't understand why he's...
I was the same. And James O'Connor was telling me at halftime last year that he's dealing with that osteopubis or whatever. That's ongoing, and that kind of makes sense because, and even when he came on the last day, he didn't look as sharp as he did the previous day, even though he delivered a lovely ball across for Duggan at one stage for a ball that went, I think, just sizzled over the bar. Or was it a goal chance? I can't remember.
It was a goal chance, yeah. It went over the bar.
He's dealing with that, so that probably explains that to some extent. But yeah.
And I'd imagine Kelly is back. The word is that Kelly will be playing Saturday. I heard, again, you just hear these rumours, you don't know until throw in, I suppose, on Saturday. I've heard that Connacht Cleary is only back as well, but he's another lad who hasn't played much. I haven't heard anything about Diarmuid Ryan or Shane O'Donnell. I'd imagine myself, look, from briefly working under Lohan in colleges hurling, that I'd imagine even if Shannon O'Donnell is, he'd be putting it to him, I'm playing you. If you're willing to play, no matter what percent someone tells me you're at, I'd imagine he'd play him.
I was even the last day, Pat. It would have been some crack when Tony Kelly was announced that he wasn't playing or whatever. Tony Kelly won't feature, coming in number 27, Shane O'Donnell, and you're just thinking the place would have exploded. But I do think, listen, it's not
leaving that for the park. They're leaving that for Innis below. You see, a real explosion then. But a funny one is, they've played 5 times, Clare and Tipp, in the round robin. Home and away, and I was on to you before how I think home and away is so important. Do you know what the record is home and away? Do you know what the wins situation is home and away between Clare and Tipp? It's an interesting one. Of 5 meetings in the round robin, 3 in Thurles, 2 in Innis.
The Tipp definitely got the 5 goals in Ennis anyway and beat them there that day. Oh, I can't remember that other fixture. And did they beat them twice in Ennis?
Clare have won the 3 in Thurles and Tipp have won the 2 in Ennis in the round robin, which to me is it's a funny one considering just the importance of home and away, and you think, and because Clare have generally been so good in this, but to have the record since 2019, they haven't been good at home to Tipp. They bet them there in 19, and they bet them there 2 years ago when they got 5 goals. Jake Morris got 2, and Sean Ryan got 1, and Jason Ford got 1 or 2 as well, I think. But
a line ball at the same day, yeah,
he did. He got 1-1. He got 1-1 from sidelines that day, Ford. It's fair clipping. But
hey, quick one for you. What was Lohan like in college?
Look, life is funny. You can ask different people and get different answers. He and I didn't see eye to eye, so look, I won't get into it. I won't get into it at all. Like, do you know what I mean? But
get into it. You can get into it.
No, I'm just saying. No. Look, I'll be honest. I wouldn't view him as very good from my own personal experience. But obviously, you're talking about an All-Ireland winning manager here now, so I'm not saying. That's an incredible achievement. I'm just saying I had him for a year, in college, a year or 2, and he didn't really play me. He didn't really fancy me as a player at the time, I presume. And then we had a run, we had a run in over that maybe, and these things happen, I suppose. Isn't
it funny? Yeah, isn't it funny how certain managers don't fancy certain players?
Yeah, and it's completely fair enough too. That's just, I suppose that's just the way it is, isn't it? Sometimes they don't fancy, and that's it. I always done well for him now when I came on in a few games for him and scored different things. And we were unlucky in a Fitz final. It was one of the all-time Fitz finals. It wasn't on telly, but we played Mary I below in Cork, and it went to extra time. And my God, what a game it was! I think it even went to 2 periods of extra time. It was an incredible game. Declan Hannon got 114. I think he was corner forward or full forward that day. Keane Lynch got man of the match. Tommy Heffernan was in UL for us. He came on as a sub that day as well for me. He got 7 points from the time he came on. He played 2 periods of extra time. It was a great game. We had a serious team. We had a great. Tony Kelly was actually injured for us the same day, and Jason Ford was sick. He actually didn't play the final, so they were 2 big losses. But Colin Galvin was playing for Mary I. Ronan Maher was playing for Mary I.
John McGrath playing for
I wasn't the only fella. He didn't start Mike Casey on the UL team either that day, and that was a bit of a funny one at the time. Mike was playing really well, and even Groat Hegarty brought him off and different things. So I don't know, it was a Limerick thing. He fancied the Clare lads over the Limerick lads maybe. I know. Look, I'm only having the crack, but that's just the way it goes. You lose a game, then if we won, if you won at the time and you come on and played, it's great. But we lost, so that's just you have great memories, I suppose, when you win, and not so much great when you lose. But a Limerick manager took over for him. Then Gary Kirby came in then the following year, and we won. So he played all the Limerick lads.
Yeah, I remember that Fitz final because that was between the 2 teams. There was about 10 or 12 EE. That basically went on to be, one of the greatest squads or greatest teams. And I'd be honest as well, I still carry all sorts of bitterness over not starting for the Fitz in UL as a 4th year and starting as a 2nd and 3rd year. So I'd carry that with me to be grave.
Yeah, it can happen, yeah. And that's just the way it is, isn't it? There's loads of them, there's players go through that every year, like club, county, schools, colleges, it's something every player comes up against at some stage. And some fellas like myself and yourself never let it go.
Yeah. But you need. A fella once said to me one time, it's very important to be balanced and have a chip on both shoulders.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Just on in, yeah.
No, I'm just saying,
quickly,
go back to the Clare and Tipp game. It's really, really hard call. I think I'd love to know who you think is going to win now, because look, I said Clare would beat Tipp before the start of the Munster Championship, but to be honest, Tipp's form has been better than Clare's form all year. So it's fair. It's a very, very hard game to call. It's the hardest game to call, I think, so far this year.
Yeah, it's very difficult call until I do often laugh at. I can't get over boys having even putting teams in accumulators and stuff like this until you actually see the teams. Like you need to. I need to see that Clare team. I need to actually see how they are, who's fit, who's playing, who's not. Because it makes such a massive difference. Like Conor Lean was on one leg coming off the last. He was big.
He did. He looked physically bothered. Yeah.
He was in bother before half time. I actually thought he was brilliant against the full forward line that was getting a lot of good ball in. I thought he was kind of defiant. But Patrick Fitzgerald got a point underneath the uncovered stand and he was gone. Like he couldn't move anymore and he was pulled off. And I don't know whether 2 weeks will be enough for him. You don't know whether 2 weeks will be enough for Conor Cleary. The Dermot Ryan one is really interesting because who's your next six? It's Dermot Ryan, and they can't slip him into six now. He'd be the legs that would go into six for Conlon if Conlon is struggling, and Conlon has been struggling. So like they're kind of caught a bit there. You're left
one or two lads that retired from him in the last year or two, and look, I know you'd love to have the Paul Flanagan there now and Shane Murray, but I suppose time moves on, doesn't it? But they'd be two players if they were there now coming on now like this when you're going through a bit of an injury crisis. They'd be huge to have two players I marked over the years and two very, very, very good players. Who's their next six? Is it even Dermot Ryan? He's such an asset on the wing. Probably is Dermot Ryan, to be fair, but maybe McInerney even comes in. I thought McInerney might go back to fullback. I thought Darragh Lohan struggled a small bit against Cork. Now he's not the first fullback to struggle against Cork.
Yeah.
No, and even the first at the start of the Waterford match, Stephen Bennett went straight in on him and got 1 or 2 points. Now he came out the field too, but it's they're not too bad. They're okay. They're still getting scores and play off plenty of players up the field, but defensively they need to get better. Now, and it's not when I'm mentioning backs, but defensively in a game of hurling, defensively everyone is a defender without the ball. Like you need your forwards to be putting backs under pressure. It doesn't matter what backs you have back there. If good forwards are getting good ball, they're very hard to stop. So this weekend, I don't know. Did you say you think did you make a prediction yet? You said you'd wait for the teams. Sorry. Darren McCarthy as well on the Tipperary side of things. Sorry, we barely mentioned Tipp there. Darren McCarthy, a huge loss. But I do think they have young forwards coming in that they look like if they get the right opportunity and something that they look like fellas like this. Is it Jamie Ormond? Is it
Andrew Ormond?
Yes, they go against Cork. Is that his first name? He's Ormond.
Andrew. Yeah.
Andrew Ormond. Yeah, he looks dangerous. Sean Keneally. These guys now will get an opportunity now with Darren McCarthy out. Whether one starts maybe or whether one, or the two of them still come on. It's again with Tipp, you just don't see, I suppose, as much of where the scores are going to come from because these fellas are unknown. Whereas more so the clear names are known. But that's that all that changes the day that like if Tipp turn up the weekend and some fella like Sean Keneally comes in and hits 1-4 or 2-1 or 1-2. And then they progress and Clare are gone. Then, that could be the start of a new Tipp team. They could get out then and it could be in a Munster final if they beat Watford. And it could be a real massive win. This is a massive game, really, isn't it? Because this could be the launching pad for some of these Tipp players. They win this game. Could be in a Munster final, could be an All-Ireland semi-final, could be an Ireland quarter-final. Same with Clare. Do 1 or 2 Clare lads step away. If they, at the end of this year, if they feel it's been a bad year, if they feel that they need change. It feels like there's a lot riding in this game.
There's a huge amount, right? Even like if Tipp don't win, like you're not guaranteed that Cahill is going to be back in charge of Tipp next year. You'd imagine he would be, but
I'd be surprised just given the fact that that's coming from. I have absolutely no idea whether it wouldn't be, but it'd be another year not out of Munster.
Yeah,
that I'd be surprised if he was, but who knows really.
Yeah, it's just like how much faith can you have in the rebuild if you're not seeing, actual improvement, and improvement is to be right there on the last day or to get third. Like that's what improvement is. Like it would surpass all expectations if they were to get to a Munster final. Like that's fair to say. That would be even a step.
And if they win their last 2 games, they will be in a Munster final.
Yeah, do you know what I mean?
More than likely. I presume 5 will get you to a Munster final.
Just about. They'll be playing. Who did be playing the last game? They're playing
Watford. They've Clare and Watford.
Yeah, they're in a great show if they have 5. Yeah, there's no point in saying anything.
But then again, and if they lose this weekend to Clare, it's very, very hard to see. It's very hard to see Watford not winning in the last game if Tipp have basically nothing to play for. Now, when the roles were reversed 2 years ago, Watford beat them when Tipp needed a win against them, and Watford were already gone. So look, it can happen. Munster Championship. Anytime we sit down here and you think this is going to happen, usually the opposite happens. So
yeah, no, it's true enough. Yeah, it's kind of like I kind of have the feel of it, and obviously Clare's age profile isn't like this, like across the board. But when you look at Conlon, McInerney, even Kelly to a lesser extent, I kind of have the feeling of an aging boxer lying against the ropes against this little lad who's like this and ducking and diving, and Tipp will have. You'd imagine Tipp would be bringing more energy to the table and more maybe pace to the table, but that's not enough a lot of the time. And the cuteness and the experience and the know-how could tip the balance. I love the fact that they both have 2 weeks going into it. There's very little excuses outside of Darren McCarthy being missing. There's very little excuses from either side. Just a quick one here from James Daly. Tipp v Clare would be some battle. As a man in neighbouring parish up the road from me said one time, it's like a death dog had to call. Yeah. It's very, very hard to call. If you're to put your head in the block, Pat, what do you reckon?
Because I went through it at the start with you before the first round of Munster, I said Clare would win this game. Now I do feel I almost feel like changing it, going on form, etc., different things, and I have been impressed with Tipp. As mad as that, some people might think I'm stupid saying that, I have been impressed with Tipp. I was very impressed with him against Limerick. I think physically you can see the work if you actually look at players, and even this can go for under 20 level and senior level. When you see players physically, how condition they're in, make no mistake about it, that doesn't just happen by accident. And that's 8, 9, 10, 12, 18 months of sheer work. And the Tipp players are in some condition. They put in some effort. I know a lot of Tipp people, they get upset when they're not winning or maybe qualifying everything. But them players, it's pretty obvious they're putting in a big effort. And will it be enough to weekend? As you said, they're coming up against a team who were just All-Ireland champion. You couldn't back against All-Ireland champions at home to stay in the championship. So on that, I'll stick with Clare by 1 point, maybe 2. But again, I hope it's a draw, just to keep it going. A draw, just to keep everything going until the last day. A draw will be great. But I go with Clare by 1 to 2 points.
Just a comment that you mentioned there about strength and condition. River Power just mentions about Jake Morris there, just how he's turned into such a physical specimen. I don't know if you saw the GA Plus interview. I think it was after the Limerick game. He was standing alongside, I think it was Cadigan, maybe Bubbles, someone else. He absolutely dwarfed him. And he's not like that. I didn't think he was that big of a man. Like he's huge. Like he's bulked up massively, and he still has the pace and still has the killer instinct as well. So it's clear that
he physically he has clearly put in. If you would just go back and watch a game from 2019 when he was coming out when they won that Ireland, I know you just get a bit older in it, but even go back to 2020, 2021, it's very clear to see that man has put in an enormous effort over the last maybe 2 years to get to the physical condition he's in there. I was at Nina and Lockmore in the championship last year up in Bordesley, and at a club game then he just glides past fellas on the field. He has some pace. I thought he really took the fight. I thought he was my man in the match against Limerick, and I thought against Cork below last week, I think he kept showing for ball, kept playing. He's playing really well. He was, to be 100% honest, he was a player I kind of doubted a couple of years ago, just looking on him as a spectator, just thinking like, I don't know, is this fella, is he just a good chance taker when he gets him, or is he the real, is he a full package? And he definitely is. He's a leader in that team. He's in all-star form, if you want to call it that, going over the 2 games. I think he's been the best player on the field, and when he's been on the field for the first 2 championship games, in or around that. And like I said, going back, that club game I was at last year, they lost a lot more by a point. He was unbelievable as centre forward when he got the ball, just busting through fellas and using pace, etc., and getting a couple of scores. Now, He was outshunned by one man on the day that gave one of the best exhibitions I've seen in a club game in years. Was the other 11, Noel McGrath, without maybe busting through fellas physically and sprinting through. He gave us an unbelievable display that day. He did, and I was not surprised when they went down and won the county championship. From watching them above and 30. It was actually the last round robin game. They beat Nina, but Nina still got through because of whatever goes on in that Tipp championship. You never know. No one ever knows who's going through. You're at a game and they genuinely didn't know who was going through. So it can score difference. Even though Nina had only won one game out of 3, they got through anyway. But Noel was brilliant. I'd imagine Noel will start the weekend. I don't know what you think. I think you're at a position when you come into knockout hurling now. My thinking on this is it's great the first 2 games. He comes on, plays really well against Limerick as an impact sub. You say, yeah, he's a bit older now, you bring on himself and Seamus. Knockout hurling is a completely different game, I think you go into this weekend when you're sitting down. If I was in the management team with Tipp, if I'm sitting down now and it's last chance saloon, my job is on the line. I don't leave I play Noel McGrath. Because I'm just thinking, with everything on the line, I can't afford to be as smart maybe and tactical. I play Noel McGrath. That's just what I think. I play Noel McGrath if it was me. Whether he will or won't, time will tell,
It's funny you say that. I'm doing a bit of management now, or in management or whatever, and when push comes to shove and you have to get over the line, you'll go with the lad that you know exactly what you're going to get.
You go with who you trust.
Yeah.
And who's done it for you before. And some people came down on the Limerick management maybe last year, or thinking, oh, are they sticking with lads they trust? But sure, how could you not in some ways? When certain players have done so much for you, for your management team, how could you not? And I just think if I'm in the Tipperary management, now loads of people would disagree. They'd say, no, look, just leave Noel for that last 20 minutes. It'll probably be tight anyway, which is probably fair enough. But I just couldn't leave Noel McGrath if I was manager sitting on the line, because I just think he's going to produce for me. Whereas if I'm going with a young lad that might be there in the next couple of years, fair enough. He could produce for me, but Noel will definitely produce for me.
Yeah, and it's grand going with the young lad, but you mightn't be there to oversee his progress.
That's true, yeah. That's true, yeah. He's not worried about some of the 20s coming now in the next year or two at this stage now, or some of the minors that they're talking about. He's thinking like, I need to win this game now. I need to win this game and beat Waterford, and then and then I have my job for next year. That's
couple of games, like big games in Leinster, really like Dublin and Antrim. Dublin obviously going up there again, but they're in a good vein of form. But somebody said to me during the week, it would be a real Dublin thing to do to not get a result or not get a win up in Antrim, but you still would expect them to get a result. Antrim were good in the first half against Kilkenny, but faded away fairly badly afterwards. Dublin were the better team against Offaly for the most part and finished strongly. Maybe they needed a bit of luck to help turn the tide a small bit against Wexford. And they turned the tide. They were brilliant and got a bag of goals and kind of put the game to bed. The Kilkenny Offaly game, from an Offaly point of view, I'd be a tad worried, being honest with you, because they took a fair beating the last day.
It's on in Nolan Park, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in Nolan Park. Offaly's running. Offaly have Antrim in Tullamore on the last day.
That's the big one.
But when you suffer a big defeat to Galway at home, and then you're going to Kilkenny, a Kilkenny team that's flying pretty high and putting up huge scores, and then you're playing Wexford, and then you're kind of like, you could be in a bad spot going into that last game. Speeney's going to be out now as well. He won't be playing any senior championship now. He done the ankle the other day for the 20s as well. So, big loss, yeah. And even coming into a game like that against Antrim, or coming into a game against any of these teams would be
he would have been. He was coming back in. He would have been back in as the starter now. Like,
yeah,
he got over the last injury. He would have been coming back in. Would say preparing for the Antrim game. He was going to be a starter. Like, he's. Some people talk about young players and maybe he's not worth the hype. And from what I seen him in the county final last year against Bandamere, like, he was the only player to score for Kilcormac, and Kilcormac are a juggernaut himself. He was the only player scoring like the last 30-something minutes in a tight, wet day county final. He's the real deal. He really is, and he is a huge loss for that Antrim game. I personally, I think if you were Davy Fitz in Antrim, you would be when you heard that news, you think, God, this is a big boost here.
Oh, massive, yeah. No, I remember that I was covering that county final. It was one of the worst.
He was unbelievable.
Like, I said it to him after, as I was chatting him briefly after, I just said, like with the conditions that were in it, it should not suit a nippy corner forward
No.
who wants that ball. He was outstanding. Yeah. He was outstanding.
I don't know if I told you that we had actually played Ballinamere, so I know how good they are as well. We played them and they beat us in a challenge match in Doon, maybe a month before that. And I was just so impressed with Ballinamere. So even, and then their fullback for Ballinamere, I think he's playing on the senior team. He's fullback.
Captain, yeah.
Then very, very, very marking him. You obviously you get a great sense of someone you mark him, and we played him on an extremely wet day in Doon now, and I marked him and I thought this fella's a serious hurler, and then to see, now I know Screeney wasn't just on him, he was moving in the county final, but to see how Screeney played against him on a wet day in the county final was just, for as good as he played with Offaly underage, it was the most impressed I've ever been with him, was the county final. I just, because you got to sense this fella's a leader, like he's not a fine day underage hurler that some people might think he could be. That day I said, no, they have a fella for real here at senior level going forward. But yeah, it doesn't look good. It looks like Kilkenny probably will win. Kilkenny will win that. I don't know. I don't want to say what they win it by now. I don't know if the handicap is probably quite large. I'd say Dublin. I wouldn't give Antrim a hope against Dublin. They don't seem to be doing anything at the moment. The Galway and Wexford one is so funny because I wouldn't back Galway with your money at the moment. You just couldn't. Like last year, they lost to Wexford below and they were big favourites, and then they went up they had Dublin at home then, and I thought this is be the day now that Galway will, they have the good players, etc. They'll stand, and Dublin just beat them well that day again. So nobody knows what's coming from Galway the weekend. They did play well against Offaly. I was able to watch it via Buff Egan's story. They were moving well, but if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have seen any of it.
What did you make of the Dottie Burke sending off? I thought it was absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous. Not a sending off at all. Again, Brian Dignan, I don't know. He got the hurley came down. He waited one Mississippi, two Mississippi, and then he hit the deck. Like, what are you doing? Like, just I just don't get it. Turn around. I was going to say, why don't you just turn around and the two of you could have tore into each other and got a yellow card if you want, but I just don't get it. To me, I just don't understand how that's a red card. Give him a yellow if you want. Like the ball was actually coming down. Maybe he didn't hear the whistle. Maybe he did. He didn't hit him on the head. He went down holding his head.
But he didn't pull like that. It was just a harmless out pull.
Yeah, the hurley came down on his shoulder, and Brian Dignan went down holding his helmet. It's the exact same thing I said a while ago about Sean O'Donoghue. I just don't understand it. I don't get it. I presume them players are just trying. They're so invested. They want to win. I presume they're trying everything. This kind of flack that people will tell you. I don't get it. I've been involved in games, big games all my life. I've got, and I've watched big games. I've seen plenty of players get belts that don't go down holding their head when they don't get hit in the head. So I just can't understand it. I just don't get it. And that has a big bearing on Galway now going into the weekend. Dottie Burke is a huge loss. Again, can't call that game. Absolutely, I go draw again because I can't. That game, like how could you say who'd win that game? I just don't. I don't know. Yeah, you have two teams there. In fairness to Wexford played well against two. It takes two teams to have a very good game, and I thought the Wexford and Dublin game was a brilliant game. Lee Chin obviously was top class. Kevin Foley I thought was unreal. Kevin Foley was brilliant. He was winning ball everywhere. Come back to field winning ball. They played really well against Galway last year. I remember Rory O'Connor went to town against Galway last year. Rory O'Connor has that in him where he just.
Pat, that was 15 against 14 as well last year. Wexford had a man sent off. Keane Byrne was sent off, and Wexford totally dominated. Yeah,
Rory O'Connor got like 1-6 that day. He went to town.
Remember the two-y one underneath the stand?
Yeah.
He went to strike the ball, and he was hooked and knocked, and the ball was over the bar before he knew where he was.
Yeah, so it's a huge game. Probably, it's basically whoever wins that game will finish third. It's looking like, doesn't it?
Yeah. Barron, yeah. Wexford still have to play Kilkenny, so if they win their remaining games, they could probably still end up in a Leinster final. But if they lose it the weekend,
I don't even mean finish third. I mean be in the top three. Whoever wins that game will be in pole position to be in the top three. I watched your interview the other day with Milan, and I saw Milan's idea about 4-4.
Yeah.
Personally, I liked it.
Really?
I know you'd be worried about diluting the importance of winning the games, but in one sense, then it would keep a team. Just say like if Tipper Clare lose this week, they'd still be in it. with a chance to win. And now I chatting to one or two lads about it since that came out, and they did say, you wouldn't like a team to win All Ireland if they lose 3 games in round robin. Look, I'd definitely be up for trying it once. If we had that in place last year, the 2 quarterfinals the team that finished, Cork ended up playing Dublin, right? Cork finished 3rd last year in the Munster, and Dublin finished 2nd. So that in Milan system, that would have been the quarterfinal anyway, and it was. Right, and then Clare played Wexford. So them 2 would have been the quarterfinals anyway in what they did. But the other 2 quarterfinals would have been Limerick versus Galway and Waterford versus Kilkenny.
Yeah.
And everybody talks about knockout hurling as real hurling. What that would do, like at the moment, we've only 2 quarterfinals and then we've 2 semi-finals. It would create an extra 2 knockout games. The token gesturism of the Joe McDonagh has reached its sell-by date. It was probably a nice idea at the time when you created the Joe McDonagh. You're still in the All Ireland, lads, but we're creating the Joe McDonagh. Now the Joe McDonagh can stand on its own 2 feet, I think. Yeah. Like asking teams to play a week after winning a final in Croke Park is ridiculous. I like it in that sense. I like the idea of 4 quarterfinals, 2 on a Saturday, 2 on a Sunday. The quarterfinals as well, by the way, are kind of dying a slow death the last couple of years. People are asking now for them not to be double headers. I've been at them a good few years, and the crowds haven't been hectic. I thought Milan's idea was great now, because I'm just thinking, God, if that was the case last year, Limerick and Galway at home in the quarterfinal, that'd be great. I love home games here, going to Limerick, and then Kilkenny, Waterford would love to be going up to Kilkenny. So there's a something to it. There'd be no harm in trying it for 1 year.
I give you the flip of it though, Pat. I don't think we'd be salivating about these Munster games like we are, because there's a trapdoor there and it's massive.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah, but some all I hear from players, I hear 2 things. I hear pundits in Munster. This kind of always drives me a small mess. And the best competition we have in the country is the Munster Championship. It's not. It's the All Ireland Championship, right? I love the Munster Championship, but it's the All Ireland Championship. That's because you know why? Every single time a player is every single time a manager is interviewed, all they say is, "Oh, we just want to get out. We just if we were to." Pat Ryan said this: if we were offered 3rd, we'd take it.
Yeah.
So it's. And then I think the Munster Championship has a chance to stand on it. The winning a Munster Championship of value is value enough to always keep the Munster Championship and Leinster Championship. I wouldn't be in favour of getting rid of the Munster and Leinster Championship, because it's still great to win a cup and a big trophy and a championship at the same time. If what his idea said doesn't happen, then would you go back to a knockout Munster Championship first, the quarterfinal, semi-finals, final, and same with Leinster, and then just have a round robin of the best 10 teams in Ireland?
Yeah,
I don't know.
That'd be my way. Like, as in, still play the provinces, and they still have a lot. If you are going for that kind of open draw, and there's a disparity between Munster and Leinster, which there clearly is, you know what I mean? So put them all in one big pot. Either have a group of 10 and everyone plays each other, or have 2 groups of 5 mixed in based on rankings or whatever. Yeah,
because it is like the Munster teams are in a great position in the Munster Championship. It is. And the attendances in Leinster are so bad at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, like the top 2 dogs really in terms of name on paper is Galway and Kilkenny, and the attendance for that game was abysmal. So something does have to happen. And what has to happen there probably is what you said. If it all comes together, we'll just say in a round robin series, Limerick and Galway will be meeting every year. They're close. Galway and Tipp and Kilkenny, Waterford and Kilkenny, Waterford and Wexford. Clare and Galway, these teams probably have to meet a bit more, and even Dublin coming, like Tipp and Kilkenny was an incredible rivalry, and I know they played so much, they deserve to play so much from 2009 to 2014 or whatever you want to call it, because they were the 2 best teams. But like, they haven't played each other now in 6 years.
Yeah,
in the championship, and it looks like they probably won't play each other this year if Tipp lose the weekend, and you're just kind of missing out on that then, aren't you? But I will go back to Milan. I do like the idea of quarterfinals being big again. And even if you take Tipp and Kilkenny, remember 2013 when they met in the qualifier?
Deadly, yeah.
Oh, that was huge, like above in Nolan Park. That could happen in Milan's system. I'm basically voting Milan as president of the GA here. In his system, that would be very possible. That could happen this year if Kilkenny win Leinster again, and if Tipp did finish 4th. Imagine that game. Above, it'd be an automatic sellout for an All Ireland quarter-final, a knockout game. And I think it's very possible, if you go back, if we went off last year's one where Limerick played Galway and Waterford played Kilkenny, if that was the case in Milan system, the chances of an upset there are very high in at least one of those games. So it's interesting. Maybe it'll happen on the line, maybe not. Look, I don't mind it. The hurling's it is in a good place still, and the Munster, we are lucky that the games in Munster are great, and the attendances are so high. So whether nothing might change at all, but I don't know. It would worry you when you see like less than 9,000 at Galway and Kilkenny. That's very worrying.
My issue is I don't think there's anything wrong with Munster. I don't think anything needs to be fixed in it at the minute. I think it will dilute the hype, it will dilute the crowds, it will dilute the quality somewhat, and the jeopardy and how cutthroat it is. That'd be my view on it. But Pat, you've been super with your time. Thanks a million. Go out and enjoy a bit of sun. Hey. Talk to you soon. Good luck. Great to have Pat with us as always there. A great hurling mind. We talked hurling for a long time there. Delighted to have Adam Moynihan to talk a bit of football. Adam, how are you getting on?
Good, Verney. How are you?
Good. What a Connacht final we had.
Oh, geez, it was brilliant, wasn't it? It's fantastic. Geez, there was so much excitement in it. Somebody kind of was topsy-turvy. You thought Mayo were done. They came back into it. But I suppose, as unpredictable as it was during the game, it kind of ended in a kind of predictable enough way for Mayo, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just, when it comes to those kind of championship minutes, unfortunately, their inability to knock it over the line or find a way to knock it over the line just seem to find a way every time. I suppose that's what makes them so compelling in one way. But geez, it's heartbreak for them time and time again.
Yeah, no, they were unlucky in certain instances. Like obviously, look, the penalty, I thought it was soft enough. Like there's a hand there. Like I think the way you can judge that is that if McGrath, if he doesn't get the penalty, is he turning around giving out to the ref? I don't think he is. I think even when the penalty was given, he was like, all right, yeah, like as in, like I don't think he was even claiming for it. So that's always kind of a bad sign for a ref. Like if the player himself isn't calling for it. There was that incident as well with Ryan O'Donoghue's 2-pointer, the free from way out. It was about 50 yards out, and Conor Gleeson got a touch in it, but one of the angles showed his hand was way behind the crossbar when he touched the ball. Now, on the one hand, is that hard for the umpires to see? Well, it is if they're standing behind the nets. Like, I don't know, maybe are they going to be more conscious now of like one of them standing nearer the post and keeping an eye on that? Because obviously keepers are going to be trying to do it. To turn that 2-pointer into a 1-pointer.
Should it be a thing at all, though? Like getting a touch on it if it goes over the bar. Should it be a thing at all? Like, should it just be still 2 points?
Yeah, that's fair enough as well. I think maybe it might make more sense if there's a block out the field, maybe. But I don't know. Maybe it doesn't really matter either way. Maybe that's the best way to tidy it up. But like as it was, Mayo were kind of hard done by. I think that would have put them up a point at one stage, maybe 114 to 113. Like they did get back into the game very, very impressively. But having said that, some of their play was just really frustrating. Like even from the very off, Conroy was unbelievable for Galway. Obviously, again in the first half, he started the game with 3 2-pointers in a row. Like that's unbelievable kicking. But the one thing I will say about the first one was that Galway worked it down the left-hand side, and you could see on the TV screen that Conroy was on his own on the opposite side of the pitch, outside the 45. And for about 12 seconds, he was standing there with his arms up in the air, trying to alert his teammates to work the ball back around. Like, first of all, how does no one see him on the Mayo's side, first of all? Second of all, are you not working in that for the whole week? Like, this is the one thing we don't want to happen, is to leave that man in space outside the arc, because he's deadly. And he, sure enough, they walked the ball around and got it back to him. And the kick is unbelievable. I think it was Stephen Cohen closing him out. Like, you just can't let that happen. Like, you're just down 2 points straight away, or you're giving away 2 points early on. Now the other two, one was a free, and the other one then was just he tumbled from the right onto the left and put it over from 45 yards. It was an unbelievable kick. So he's lifting. But yeah, look, I think when it came down to it, they had the goal chance with Hessian. Gleeson made a decent save, but again, it's like you just have to take those chances. Like maybe it's the wrong man in that position. But it feels like for Mayo, unless it's Ryan O'Donoghu, they're nearly all the wrong men. Do you know what I mean? Like, you only really back him in those positions. For Mayo, they had a chance with a 2-pointer at the end with Rowan, and obviously it's a tough kick. But again, these are the shots that you have to make if you want to beat the big team. So, look, as I said, it was very exciting. Galway are in a good place now. I mean, was it 4 in a row now in Connacht? Like, that's good going. But for Mayo, Jesus, demoralising. And I don't know how they like. I know it's been their story for a long time, the hard luck story, but that was another kind of another chapter to add to that kind of sad enough tale for them.
Pádraig Joyce was kind of very coy on Damien Comer and Shane Walsh's fitness afterwards. Number one, it's a very positive development for them to win a Connacht title without either of those two lads involved, and they're finding ways to win big games without relying on them. I think, looking back, I think last year he would have liked not to have had to leave them on the pitch at different stages, maybe, potentially when they were obviously carrying knocks, and it's probably not great for a squad or the morale of a squad when you don't win. It's okay when you do win, you kind of get away with it, you're justified. But he's developed more, and there's more lads that can kind of share the scoring load, should we say, now, and they're not as reliant on them. And if they get back, it's a bonus, but it's not necessarily a must. They'd obviously love to have him back and flying. But like Comer, if you look at Comer's graph throughout his career, the really good years he's had are when he's been fit the whole way through, and he's played games just reps, and he's up at a level. And Walsh has probably been the same, and I know Walsh was brilliant throughout the league. So they're finding other ways, which is kind of important too.
100%. And I think they're at the stage now where, like you said, you can't really call those fellas optional because they're so good, but they are in a good place now where they don't. I mean, it's even sounds harsh to say that they don't need them, because how can you not need fellas who are that good on their day? But I agree. Like, it feels like they're kind of moving on a little bit to a different stage of their kind of progression. Where as before, you're saying, "Jesus, if Walsh is missing, they have the hope. Like he's their only fellow who's going to score for them." Or if Comer's missing, like who's going to keep the full back who's going to keep the full back line busy? And while Walsh is doing the damage around the place or whatever. Now they have different weapons. They're obviously utilising the 2-point shot really well. They're unbelievably strong across the middle, not just their midfielders, but they've got other big guys across the middle of the pitch as well for kickouts. So they're in a really good place. Look, there's still a long way to go in the season, and you don't know, like as you said, if Walsh and Comer are 100% fit and they're going into a quarter-final, semi-final, final, like they will play, but I don't think it's guaranteed that they'll be necessarily starting their first game back from injury. Do you know what I mean? I think it could be phased in and then based on how they're playing rather than the situation before, whereas like they have to come in no matter what.
Yeah, we got a bit suckered into thinking that the Munster Championship was somewhat alive a few weeks ago, and after about 3.5 minutes, it was back to reality last Sunday. Realistically,
yeah. Well, I was up in the park. Obviously, the pitch is just up the road from here, and geez, it was an unbelievable day. The sun was beating down, and town was hopping like it's a real Munster final vibe, and everyone was in such good form, and it was a real kind of buzz around the place. And then within about 5 minutes, the whole place was just completely deflated. Like Kerry fans and Clare fans alike. It was like, geez, I'd say fellas were already thinking like, what's the earliest now I can sneak back into town? It was like that kind of vibe inside there, because town was a lot better cracked than the match was. But look, I thought Kerry were decent. I thought they moved the ball well. They were kicking it long. Tony Brosnan was kind of operating as a kind of Paddy Clifford kind of figure, leaving it in long with the outside of the left. And look, there was a bit, I suppose Clifford did really well for his first goal. The finish was a bit kind of wasn't the sweetest strike for the first goal, and the second was a bit of a tap in. So look, yeah, you can't really, from Kerry's point of view, you really learn nothing from that match at all. Like that's kind of the only bad thing about it. Like they're going into the game now in 2 weeks' time against Roscommon or on Saturday week, and it's kind of like you're probably drawing more in the Cork game, which was 4 weeks ago at that stage, than the Clare game for kind of inspiration or things you can work on. One thing I will say, and I know this isn't a secret or it's no surprise to anyone, but I've been like David Clifford's kicking in the last 2 games has been really, really good. His stats have been through the roof. Like, and look, he's accurate normally anyway, but he's taken 16 shots in the last 2 games and he's scored 214. Like he's averaging 1.25 points per shot. He's only missed 2 shots in the last 2 games. One was at the crossbar, one was over the post. So I know, look, one of the games was against Clare. You can kind of take that with a pinch of salt, but against Cork it was 9 points from 9 shots. Like it's really encouraging from Kerry's point of view. And I think he's taking his shots from closer to goal as well, which is obviously mainly because of the new rules. He can work the ball in closer. He's under pressure. He doesn't have to go 40 yards from goal searching for the ball to shoot over a kind of low block or whatever. But I think it's also part of, like he spoke a couple of years ago. I interviewed him and he was talking about maybe being more selective with the shots that he takes, which sounds a bit mad because he seems to be able to score from all angles. But definitely on like the kind of data from the last 2 games, he's really trying to work it in close, and sure, when he's within 25, 30 yards, really he doesn't miss. So that's kind of one positive to take from Kerry's last 2 games. Although, as I said, from the Clare match, really you couldn't be taking a whole pile off it.
Just a quick one. He's obviously not going to be around forever. He's far from old now, but let's just say he plays for Kerry for another 7-8 seasons, something like that, and he's still in his pomp. What would that bring him to, like 33, 34, something like that ish?
Yeah, he's 26 now.
Yeah. So
yeah,
like you kind of need to make hay at some point while he's around. Like Kerry need to win 4 or 5 All-Irelands while he's around, realistically, don't they?
I'm slow to say it, like, but yeah, like they do really. I mean, like we like he came in at a very kind of shaky enough time for Kerry. He came in, his first year was 2018. Kerry got knocked out in the Super 8s, and they were really nowhere near the All-Ireland. That team was kind of breaking up. Fitzmaurice was just leaving. A lot of the older players were kind of packing it in at that stage. So he came in, and there was kind of a feeling at the start, okay, well, this might happen straight away. Like, you know, Sean O'Shea coming in as well. There was high hopes for Diarmuid O'Connor, and he seems to be fulfilling that lately. So, but it was kind of a case of like, you know, maybe it might take 2 or 3 years, but then nearly won it 2019 against Dublin. Then you had a disappointment where people felt maybe 2020 and 2021 were left behind them. 2022, Jack came in and won it again. But definitely the last 2 years, like I thought they were so close in 23 against Dublin, and it was maybe Clifford's kind of, I suppose he didn't hit the heights that he usually hits that day. And then like the following year, last year against Armagh, that like a lot of people in Kerry felt like that was one that Kerry left behind as well. So you can easily say that. I mean, most Kerry fans will say Kerry have left 5 All-Irelands behind in the last 6 years. Like, but you could make a case. You can make a case for definitely 2 or 3 of them that maybe Kerry should have, with Clifford kind of coming into his prime. Now, like he's 26 since January, he should really be hitting his kind of, you know, going by stats, he should be hitting his top form in the next couple of years. And just like really for his own, for how good he is and his own kind of like legacy, I think everyone down here is really hopeful that he can win multiples. Like, I think one wouldn't be enough it wouldn't match his talent, like it wouldn't match his contribution. And it's obviously it's not down to him. Like he has a team around him that need to back him up and need to come good as well. But yeah, I'd agree. Like I would be disappointed if, you know, he's retiring in 8 years' time and he only has 1 or 2 All-Irelands. Like, I think that'd be real kind of, that wouldn't be good enough for where he is as a player now and for the ability he has. So yeah, like, you know, fingers crossed.
It'd be hard listening to you, but 4 or 5 would be a good number from to finish it. But we'd have to grin and bear it for a while. There's loads of football on this weekend, Adam. Obviously, the Tailteann Cup is kicking off. Probably the marquee games in there. It's probably Westmeath and Antrim. Offaly going to Wicklow. Offaly got a nice little boost the other night with the Miners winning totally out of the blue. They had to go to extra time against Wicklow to even stay in the competition. Then they've produced a couple of brilliant results, and Louth are absolutely flying high as well in all grades as well. They've the 21, they've the senior this weekend obviously against Meath, and they have the minor against Offaly as well. Just a couple of games that we'll touch on. We touch on the 2 provincial finals. Obviously, they are 2. Like, it's not great to look forward to a Leinster final. It's not great to be thinking that 50,000+ are going to Croke Park. Both teams have a realistic chance of winning. And even the neutral, who has been totally just phased out of Leinster in recent years, that's just the nature of it, and had no interest in it really. What are Dublin going for now? 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 this year. And now everybody is so enthused by what will happen, and even 2010 feeds into it as well. It's a deadly game to look forward to.
Oh, it's brilliant. The storyline is unbelievable. Like, such drama even to get to this point. And as you said, like, obviously, especially for Leinster people, well, obviously, in particular, Meath and Louth, it's going to be unbelievable excitement to have that massive crowd in Croke Park. I think you're going to surpass the crowd even that was there in 2010. Like, so that's really encouraging. But yeah, from a neutral point of view, it makes such a huge difference to be looking forward to this kind of match rather than going, geez, are Louth going well enough to lose by less than 5 kind of thing. Like, where I think it's fascinating that Louth have been there the last 2 years. So on one hand, like, I know they're going in as slight favourites, but it's slight enough. Like, but I actually think that there's, well, I don't wonder what you think. Who do you think there's more pressure on between Meath and Louth going into this match?
Pressure. I would say there's more pressure on Meath to back up what they did the last day, and just because traditionally they're a much bigger force within Leinster, definitely the last 60 years or so anyway. And Meath are favourites for the game, aren't they?
Oh, are they? I thought it was the other way around.
Oh, maybe someone said it to me that Meath were favourites. Maybe I picked it up wrong.
I could have that wrong, but I know it's close enough anyway. There isn't much in it. Like, yeah.
But louder in the third final in a row. So this is a well-seasoned team coming to the boil nicely. Mulroy is back fit. Lennon is back fit. Was very good the last day with 4 points. Meath have all the turmoil in the back that happened in the background, but they kind of blew that out of the water the last day. And you're kind of thinking maybe just the new broom coming in has swept clean in Meath. But I won't be convinced until they actually kind of go and win it probably. But it is fascinating. It really, really is. And there's so much colour to it. There's so much excitement to it. I think Joe Brennan came out and said that there was a healthy hatred, was what he said, between the two, which is it's a gentle kind of way of putting it, really, in many respects. But it's a brilliant game to look forward to.
Yeah, I saw as well Bernard Flynn. He was talking to someone in the Independent, and he said he's slightly concerned that we won't get the 50-50 calls after what happened 15 years ago. He thinks that's going to play into the referee's mind. But I think that I'm look, Meath were unbelievable against Dublin. I was so impressed by them, especially Costello, Frayne, Conlon. Like I thought they were outstanding. I always worry about teams in that situation though, when they have a massive emotional win in the semi-final, and then if they back it up again, they have to kind of win 2 finals in a row, if you know what I mean. Whereas for Louth, they're kind of going into it, they were probably half expecting to get to the final from their side. I know it was a close game against Kildare as well, but they've been there before. I just don't think that there's as much hype about them, and I don't think there's as much kind of noise being made about them. They're kind of coming in kind of in a better place, if that makes sense. But of course, like Meath in their dressing room, they'd be saying, "Look, lads, we're lifting. Like, we can't be stopped. We're after beating the Dubs." So, we'll have to see how it pans out. I think it's going to be a very exciting game. I would be favouring Louth just on the basis that they've been there before, but I wouldn't be backing them with too much money either.
Yeah, Meath wouldn't be a team that I would generally back. But while I'm saying about Louth have their best players coming back, Meath have lost Jordan Morris or whatever and lost a couple of players, but they've generally been playing. All these guys have been playing the whole way through this year. And they probably have a bit more under their belt this year. Louth have a bit more under their belt in recent years and have had the upper hand on them. And obviously had that big qualifier win over them last year. Yeah, I think this is extra time and even more written all over it. Genuinely do. And if there's penalties to be taken, they have to be taken into the Davin end. They just have to. Whatever happens, there's going to be drama in the Davin end. That's all I know.
And there'll be something about the keeper coming off his line, and or something. There'll be some drama in that as well.
Something like that. Like if you're a referee, I'm not 100% sure who's reffing it. I should have checked before I came on, but imagine there's just something like that. Would you just be like, "Oh, I didn't see it. I didn't see it come on." You know what I mean? Considering what Marty Sludden, what the abuse he got, and there was I don't know if you saw that AI generated. The way there was action figures going around of everybody there a couple of weeks ago, and his was it like a cane or something like that? Just mad. The other provincial final as well. The fair chance of these two living up to the hype. Meath and Louth is going to be really, really interesting either way. And our man Donegal, Geezer hasn't been able to get a win over McGuinness, even stretching back to Kildare and Donegal in that 2011 quarter final. And he hasn't been able to get the upper hand on him. It was obviously went to penalties last year. Armagh want an Ulster, they do. They want an Ulster. It's been since 2008. But McGuinness, is one of the few managers, probably outside of maybe McGeaney, probably Pádraig Joyce, who will unashamedly say, "We're going for the Ulster title." I cherished Ulster titles as a player. It's so important as a manager as well. Go the direct route, shall we say, get silverware on board and plough ahead. And even in his second year as Donegal manager, they won the Ulster the first year, beaten All-Ireland semi-final. They won the Ulster second year, All-Ireland winners. They won Ulster last year. Throw Division 2 in there as well from the two reigns as well. He has a tried and tested kind of formula, and they are quite formulaic even under the new rules as well. And it's going to be interesting to see if Geezer can break them down. I wonder, will what Armagh are missing finally come home to roost in a really big game. That's like, don't get me wrong, Tyrone was a big game, but will like Green O'Neill's absence would say, and a couple of other players maybe not having as much game time under their belt, will that finally come home to roost in a big game?
Yeah, it could very well do. I'm like, I know it's going to be a very exciting game, and of course Ulster final in Clonus and all the rest of it, and history between the teams, the storyline with Armagh not winning in 17 years, losing the last 2 finals on penalties. Like, surely your numbers are going to come up at some stage in this competition. But I do like, just having seen Donegal in their last game and the way that they play, I would be a bit worried that it's going to be a similar pattern to the Monaghan game, where they do sit off, they do play quite deep. When they get the ball, at times they attack fast, but if they can't go super fast, it goes a bit slow again, and they're very kind of, like you said, formulaic, and they break things down and go kind of slow. So like, McGuinness obviously doesn't care about that. He'll play whatever way it takes to win the game. Armagh do like to play a lot faster, but you're right. I think they have been missing that little bit, maybe that kind of X factor up front. Like Ryan O'Neill not being there. I don't know, has Turbot been really doing the same things this year as he'd been doing last year? Do you know, that kind of way? So I think definitely, I read a great piece by Cara O'Kane this week. I don't know if you saw it in Irish News about all the stats from the players. There was some research by him, but like Donegal, they're not scoring goals, they're not scoring 2-pointers, but they're deadly accurate with their 1-pointers. Like, obviously, we spoke about Morgan before, Kieran Thompson, who else? McBrearty, Michael Langan. So these guys are just, they're basically not missing. But I think a lot of it is because obviously they're working their openings very well. They're being patient. So Armagh are going to have to really, like, bide their time and not lose their concentration when Donegal are doing that kind of back and forth kind of play, and then attack at pace when they can. But yeah, just on the balance of things, I think Donegal have been a bit more balanced over the course of the season so far. But part of me is like, Jesus, like, surely Armagh can't lose 3 in a row. Like, they have to get a break. And if this game goes to penalties, like, I won't be able to watch it. Like, I don't know what Armagh are going to feel like. Like, the pressure on those players if it goes that far, even into extra time. But yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards Donegal. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, you know that you're saying about, like, Armagh, can't happen on penalties again. You know that great Mick McCarthy clip, like, it can't go on like it can. You know what I mean? Like, look at poor old Mayo since the early 50s. It just keeps happening over and over again. I think Donegal will prevail by a score again. It could be after extra time, or it could be penalty job again. But I think Donegal are better than they were last year. That's not to say Armagh aren't better than they were last year. They're as good as they were last year, but I think Donegal are even a bit better. Like, even like Darrow Boyle has really stepped up to the plate. Murphy's influence obviously didn't have him last year. They kind of have pretty much a full deck to choose from. That Cara O'Kane piece, I think the takeaway that was Peadar Morgan has only given away the ball once. Was that that's just
74 possessions, I think, or something like that. Like, yeah,
that's kind of crazy. So, like, while the new game has kind of changed how football has been played, it hasn't changed too much how Donegal have played, and it's been very possession based, very percentage based as well. The shots are coming from high percentage areas as well. I probably think Donegal will get the job done again. But 2 fascinating provincial finals to look forward to. There'll be loads of football and hurling to look forward to again next Thursday, and we'll digest a bit from the weekend again. So thanks a million, folks, and to our sponsors Lottoland as well. We'll be back again next Thursday at 4 o'clock to review it all and preview it all. Thanks a million, Adam.